Hello, my name is Terry Badger. I'm the managing editor at BAI and host of the BAI Banking Strategies podcast. Thank you for joining us for this webinar presented by Anvil, Using Paperwork Automation to Reduce Costs and Unlock Growth, a Sunrise Bank's case study. Today you'll hear how Sunrise Banks moved from a time-consuming manual paperwork process to a quick, user-friendly automated technology, increasing loan processing for existing and new customers fivefold. You'll also experience a live paperwork automation demonstration. Before we get started, just a reminder that with many of us still working from home, there may be unique technology challenges. If you have difficulties on your end, please know that a recording of today's webinar will be sent out to view on demand. And if disruption happens on our end, we'll work to fix it as quickly as possible. Additionally, I'd like to take a moment to review a couple housekeeping items. We'll wrap up this webinar with a question and answer period. At any time during the presentation, please type your questions into the Q&A box on your screen. We will address the questions at the end of the presentation. We will be using the polling feature during today's webinar. Note that you will not see the polling question if you are viewing the presentation in the full screen mode. So we ask that you minimize your screen so that you can participate in today's polling. And finally, at the end of today's webinar, you will see an online evaluation on your screen. Your feedback is important to us at BAI as we strive to address the key issues impacting the industry, especially in today's challenging business environment. So please take a few minutes at the end to complete the survey. It's now my pleasure to introduce today's presenters. Mangat Ing is founder and CEO of Anvil, a paper automation platform that replaces inefficient PDF-based workflows with modern guided web forms accessible from any device. Prior to Anvil, he was a software engineer and product manager and founder of the bill-splitting app Ledger, and was a founding team member of Dialpad and Loom, which was acquired by Dropbox. At Dropbox, Mangat worked on Dropbox for Business, building enterprise collaboration features. And Brett Cooksey is Sunrise Bank's Chief Information Officer, who has more than 2 decades of experience in the information technology industry. Brett joined Sunrise after 8 years at C.H. Robinson, serving several IT leadership roles, most recently as Senior Director of Technology, E-commerce, and Technical Strategy. Before this, he was a tenured SVP Technology Manager at Wells Fargo Bank, followed by 2 years as Director of Administration at Love Mercy in Kenya. So Mangat, let me hand it over to you now.
Awesome. Thank you, Terry, and thank you everybody for joining today. I am extremely excited to share what we have, but let's start with a quick rundown of the agenda for today. So we're going to start with a little bit more of an introduction with the speakers, followed by an intro of our respective companies. No sound. I see a question that says no sound. Is everybody able to hear us properly? Yes? Okay. I'll continue. The next step will be why paperwork automation, talking a little bit about modernizing the PDF processes, and then finally the Anvil Advantage, along with a deep dive case study on kind of the PPP work we did, and then finally an Anvil product demo. So as Terry graciously mentioned at the top of this discussion, my name is Mangat Ing. I am the co-founder and CEO of Anvil. I have spent over a decade as a software engineer at various technology companies in the Bay Area, and have really worked on a lot of process automation type solutions. One thing that I've noticed when working in the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area, is that a lot of times technology companies are actually working to automate and streamline existing processes. And so that really led me to where I am today with Anvil. And I'll hand it off to Brett. Oh. Brett, I think you're on mute.
There we go. Technical issues. Good afternoon, everybody. Try it again. Brett Cooksey here. I've been in the IT industry for a good 20 plus years. primarily in finance and financial institutions supporting Wells Fargo, a lot of digitization and application development. Then went to C.H. Robinson and really focused on product development and building out those capabilities. And then came to Sunrise Banks after building up all my tools, if you will, to act as the CIO. And brought that application development and product development experience to Sunrise Banks. And working with Mangat and the Anvil team has really been a joy to get back to those roots.
Thank you. And one thing I would say when we first connected, Brett, we definitely nerded out a little bit on logistics and automation and logistics. Terry didn't mention this, but I did also spend a little bit of time at Flexport. That was a way we're definitely connected on the logistics side.
Yeah,
cool. So I'm a little bit. We're not anymore. Cool. So I want to jump into a little bit about talking about our respective companies. As I mentioned a couple times, Anvil is an SF-based technology company. We are building software that helps businesses like banks manage their paperwork load and help streamline and automate that. We are a engineering-focused company. We have a team that is mostly engineering and a lot of veterans from various technology companies in the Bay Area. We are also a venture capital funded company. We have funding from Google, Gradient, which is their AI arm, as well as Citibank. So hopefully those names ring a bell. And I'll hand off to Sunrise, to Brett.
Yes, and Sunrise Banks, as you can see, is founded in 1986. It's a family-owned business. Certified CDFI and B Corp organization. It's a really progressive entrepreneurial community bank. It reflects our CEO, David Reiling. He's really an opportunist and just really deeply cares about the impact that we make to underprivileged, unbanked. And I just lost my network. Okay.
We can still hear you though, Brett.
Okay, I'll keep going. Yeah, I just got a big red block. It said network lost. And so 1.2 billion in assets, so not too small, but not too big for certain regulations to give us some extra access to the market. And we partner with fintechs, so we've got a community bank, and then that stores, lends, and moves money. But we have these fintech partnerships that we allow them to sell products, and we're the bank for them. For this use case, and certainly the way that we partnered very well with Anvil has been in the community bank, but we certainly are looking for other opportunities to grow that even more.
Yeah, and I guess one of the things we will be talking today is how to adapt quickly in changing times, like when your network drops. So this is very fitting. I do want to mention that, it has been a pleasure working with Sunrise Banks, and it's really cool that they are a CDFI. This has allowed us to, really work with a lot of businesses, smaller businesses, through Sunrise Banks in kind of our PPP example that we will demonstrate later. Okay, moving on. So I'm going to hand it off to Brett to start this slide and talk a little bit about kind of what he was looking when they were looking for a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. The real genesis, if you will, of the search was the PPP program, and I came to Sunrise Banks last January, in fact, and the PPP program kicked off very quickly in the March timeframe, and we were looking for solutions. We didn't have a lot of technologies in-house. It's primarily outsourced. And I guess the challenge for us is really trying to find something. We didn't have a significant investment in digital assets by way of a secure client portal, for instance. So it was a little bit of starting from scratch, but looking for something that's really simple to implement. Security front of mind, definitely want to be keep that front and center, certainly, because with an email and password combination, and spam and all that, resetting passwords, forgetting them, it's just really cumbersome. So security and simplicity for that. I'd say the ease of use for both parties. We had our external borrowers using the application or submitting information, and then we have to generate internal PDFs. So there's ingestion and not just the answers to the questions, And those are pretty cryptic. If anybody's read one of those PPP applications, you'd definitely get a medal if you could make sense of it. And so something that we could control the narrative to really gather the data points that we needed. I'd say seamless integration. We had multiple systems internal that our users are working with day to day, and we have probably 12 different functions in the bank that needed to run this process. So we wanted to find a way that we could streamline the information internal and get it into some system that we could present throughout that life cycle. And modern messaging architecture is vital in this day and age. It's not a fire and forget and then keep on polling or pinging the originating party to get information or status. And so modern architecture, web architecture allows you to get a notification when there's a change in status. And so that was critical for us. And then supplemental documentation. There's one thing of just submitting that first packet of information, but how do you get subsequent information? And certainly knowing that our borrowers, or for this use case, needed to support and supply multiple versions of information or multiple proof points, we needed an option that could really help us with that too.
Yeah, thank you, Brett, for all the kind words. I promise everybody that we did not pay Brett to say those things. But I think he hit on a lot of really good points. Security and usability is obviously very top of mind for everybody, especially as we are going to a more remote-first digital world. I actually, a little bit of background, I actually started Anvil after having worked with a couple of mortgage brokers that were asking for information over email. And as a software developer that has built enterprise scale tools, it didn't feel right to be sharing my social security over email. So one of the things that Anvil is really focusing on is helping businesses kind of transition from the status quo today, which is paperwork, and the processes that have been built up around paperwork, to a digital first future. And I think one thing that really differentiates us is the kind of the way we go about doing this. We're not coming in and saying, hey, you have to use our tool and use it our way. We're saying, what is your process today, and how can we work with you to figure out how to make that process digital? So I think this is to the second point, which is, helping you compete with digital first competitors. Of course, evolving expectations. We all know 2020 changed a lot of people's minds on a lot of things, so we're going to set that aside. And then, of course, operating margins. A lot of things computers are really good at and makes it easier, faster, and Anvil helps you take advantage of that. And then finally, security, which we've touched on a couple times here.
And Mike, maybe I could just footnote that, when you talk about paperwork automation, what is really interesting is the fact that in this use case, you had requirements evolving all the time. And so traditional paperwork at Wells, I was really involved in OCR, that technology, and barcoding paper, and you're working so much with static information and static requirements, but this is not the case. And it's evolved so much more than just, OCR or even some of the computer vision tech that's out there today that gives you the edge on reading a doc, but this is a different animal altogether.
Thanks, Brett. That's a good point. I think one thing that Anvil really tries to do is flip the model on its head a little bit. I mean, traditionally, when you think about paperwork automation, you go to a solutions provider and say, I have this pile of paperwork, pile of PDFs, and I need to extract information out of this PDF. So you use systems like OCR, use various barcoding systems, and you try to imperfectly extract the information out. And I think that's a key point, is when you're doing these systems, it does a pretty good job, and certainly technology has improved, but it is never 100% guaranteed to be accurate. So what Anvil does is actually we collect the data digitally to start in a web form, an online form, and that is then put onto a PDF. But we also provide you that data that we capture, and then as a machine-readable format that doesn't need to be read with character recognition. Sorry, that's a mouthful there. And finally, you can kind of ingest that information directly into your systems. So here, on the screen, we have kind of a preview for you to kind of get a sense of feel what Anvil is like. On the left-hand side, you have a browser window. It has a couple of web fields for clients to be able to fill in. It is mobile-friendly out of the box. And these fields can be dynamic. They can hide and show based on previous answers, as well as do validation on all the data that's coming in. By the time somebody's completed the flow, you have the PDFs that are generated on the right-hand side. This is an example, obviously, but for the PPP, it was oftentimes which PPP form to fill out. And then finally, at the bottom, we show our signature platform, which allows you to sign these documents. But it also we also integrate with other service providers like DocuSign.
Yeah, I'll pitch in here too, on this modernizing PDFs. I think the unexpected benefit for us was, again, we're not just dealing with a static form. I mean, at the end of the workflow, you generate a PDF that's completed, but all that information flowing in from the get-go as a package for us to drop straight into our databases and drive downstream reporting, analytics, status changes, and even validations. It's been phenomenal, and also the ability to just change the workflow, to tweak it real time when we're noticing the data points coming in and data quality errors are constantly showing up. Tweak the front end, tweak the questionnaire as Mangat is showing here, and you still maintain the integrity of that PDF at the end, but the changes flow through and really help your borrowers or your external constituents that are trying to submit that information to you.
Yeah, and I guess I apologize. I realized I completely forgot about the poll on the previous slide. We were just so into talking about the mundane edge cases of pay for it. But maybe we should go ahead and pull up that poll now. Now that we've already, butchered the butchered the kind of like the delivery on this. So I guess one thing is, from a digital tools perspective, how prepared did your organization feel when it came to managing a shift to remote work in light of COVID? There are a couple options: some not prepared, some are prepared, very prepared. It was a breeze. Am I allowed to answer this?
Can I answer this?
Yeah, we can totally throw this percentage. Cool. I'll give another minute or two for people to respond. Maybe we can bias the results a little bit.
Yeah, no, I'll refrain.
Cool. So, I mean, it looks like, it's between not prepared and somewhat prepared. And I think that has been a common kind of response that we've received when talking to community banks, talking to businesses that are traditionally in a paperwork-heavy industry. One thing that we often see when we're talking to potential customers is a lot of businesses are just adopting DocuSign or just trying to figure out how to get documents signed, when you're not physically together. I think I saw a meme the other day, which was, stop sending me PDFs to print out on printers that I don't own. Like people of my demographic, we don't actually own printers anymore. So you have to move towards a system like DocuSign. But I guess it seems that, there's definitely a learning curve. And I think there is a little bit that's left that leaves people wanting to have a little bit more. I think DocuSign still has a lot of the issues that we discussed earlier, which is the ability to take the information off the DocuSign document. You can collect all the information you want. There's not really a good way to make sure that the information is entered correctly, and there's not really a good way to take that information off the document. Cool. I'm going to go ahead and end this poll and move on to the next slide. So we covered a lot of this already. I think, and just kind of the back and forth between Brett and I think, but just to highlight some of the key points that we think are important on the Anvil side is really simplify the onboarding. Because Anvil can dynamically hide and show fields and really customize the workflow to the person that's filling out the information, it can be a simpler experience. It can be a better digital experience as opposed to having somebody look at an entire form and then a PDF form in this case, and then have to figure out which fields they need to fill out. Also, security. Again, alluding to my story at the beginning, which is requesting this type of information over email or through other methods is inherently insecure. I think the fact of the matter is, when we're all trying to figure out how to work remotely, we often try to default to the easiest way to do things. And if the easiest way to do things is over email, that's when security suffers. On the business side, and maybe Brett can speak even more about this, but it's really about the downstream automation that we're trying to help businesses achieve. I don't know, Brett, if you want to add a couple comments.
Yeah, absolutely. All of these bullet points are there. I could talk to them individually. Eliminating the manual data entry, not just for your customers and all that cumbersome process for them to understand what they're even answering and providing, and internally not having to retype that information, because invariably you're getting a scanned document that somebody internal now receiving via email or secure client portal or whatever submission method. You're opening it up, cracking it open in whatever form they've scanned it and resubmitted it and edited it with Photoshop or whatever, PDF Acrobat reader, and then typed it straight in there. And then that's getting submitted in whatever format. Yeah, MS Paint. Oh, I don't. And so just the first touch, if you will, of that artifact, it spawns into so many additional tasks of, can you read the information? Is it legitimate and is it presentable? And does it answer all the questions? And then spawns another process of reaching out to those individuals to make sure it's correct. I mean, the paperwork management is almost zero, because we simplify it in the sense that you virtually eliminate it. We went entirely digital, and I'll get into that example a little later. And then insights into process. Again, lost my video feed, but actually you can see the progress real time, both in Anvil as the borrowers or external parties are completing those documents, or that workflow, if you will. And internally, we're also seeing it. So that informs our sales people, our business development people, our first step, our lender review team that is seeing these applications being spun up and workflows being spun up in Anvil. And we can actually shift our staffing focus with that insight. It's incredible. And then other operational processes downstream, we get halfway through a process, and then you need to create a PDF, plug it straight into Anvil. And some of the secret sauce that will blow your mind is the fact that you can send information, you can feed an encrypted link back to the external constituent with their information in it, and they can click on it and it will pre-fill the workflow. So that operational process, not just internally, but for your users, gets leveled up pretty significantly. We saw that throughout the life of our PPP program, and I'll give you details in a little bit.
Yeah, well, why don't we just go ahead and jump into the PPP program? I think we'd love to kind of talk through the process that we created and how we kind of implemented the PPP workflow. I guess you mentioned it was second round of the first round of PPPs. I believe by CDC nomenclature, it's Group 1B, I think is the nomenclature here. Group 1B, but nobody knows.
Exactly.
So why don't we start at the beginning? I think, we were introduced to Sunrise after you had already done the first round, the first tranche of money that was part of the PPP program. And can we talk a little bit about what that was like?
Yeah, that was our I'd say our analog scenario. We had a lot of manual. The program was spun up very quickly by the SBA just because of the need, the sheer need. And being a community bank, we're on the front lines. We're seeing all these businesses and people really struggling and really have a heart to really target these funds for those particular individuals. And so our first round, we spun it up so quickly. It was all manual ingestion of the information via email. Please don't tell anybody. And tried secure email and spun so many times around, is it in the spam filter? Have you received it? And we don't have any information. And borrowers are getting upset because they're not getting any touch points from us along the way from a progress perspective. But we used that to assemble a team. We had 12 steps. We took representatives of all our loan origination, credit underwriting, compliance, and then loan booking, ACH, or disbursements and settlement, brought them all together and quickly put a really, I'd say, robust but streamlined manual process together. And then from a technology perspective, we were looking for what vendors could provide us this capability to level up and to digitize this workflow now real time. And there were a lot of options out there, from a shrink wrap to partial componentry to full integrations into our core. And so the problem was that the process and the program spun up so quickly that even big vendors couldn't develop the code fast enough to meet the demands of the first round. So by the second round, we'd met Anvil, we'd made the call, we took the leap, and literally you'll see that the metrics here. In 5 days from the time that the SBA released the new updated PDF forms to the time that we actually had borrowers now clicking on that link and lighting up a form, and we started ingesting that information purely digital, the data quality went through the roof. And so that second round spun up, and within 2 weeks, we managed to pull in about 2,500 applications, and then whittled it down through all the validations to about 1,200. And the first round, we only hit about 600. So I can't even tell you how many times the business came and said, this has leveled up just from a data quality perspective, right? And the ability for us as this program was evolving. I mean, this is the first time I've done product development at C.H. Robinson, multinational, big business, right? But this is the first time I've ever built a product where the requirements are evolving and there's actually pretty significant risk for getting it wrong because you don't qualify for forgiveness at the end of the pipeline. So our I'd say our compliance and regulatory team is very thorough, and so we wouldn't just take all these apps and throw them at the SBA and get access to E-Train and get those funds earmarked in the hope that we'd get as much money for our borrowers as possible. We did all the due diligence on every single one of those loans that we feel 100% good about the process, and then when forgiveness comes around, then we're in a better place. And Anvil really helped us two ways: onboarding that information from a borrower. If there was ever an error or an issue, we could easily reach back to that borrower, crack open the workflow, and they could correct it. Or if it's missing documentation, here's a link associated with your application. It's not a secure client portal where you have to go and log in and remember your user ID and password. Click the link, upload the information. We pull it into our ecosystem, drop it in the same place with the borrower's original documentation, and then we built a really simple Microsoft Power application, which is basically a Canvas app that could pick up all these different pieces out of a database and then move it along from process to process. And so that was our second round, second part of the round one. Then forgiveness came along, and that was also another surprise reveal. There's forgiveness for the round one, and honestly, we really struggled to take the first analog applications and actually convert them to digital. It was painful. We had to go and retype the information into the database just so we could have those sync. When forgiveness came along, we were pretty much digital, and we spun that up within, about a week. And the only reason it took that long is because SBA was revising their guidances like in real time. And the beauty of it is, reach out to the Anvil team, and in most cases, once we had that first document or workflow defined, it's honestly hours for those changes to take place. We've got a listener on the inside of our infrastructure that gets a ping at the end of the borrower or the external constituent finishing that workflow, and we pull the whole data packet, all the digital information, So all the information that was entered by that borrower, and that the documents themselves, and it's into our digital ecosystem. And then the added benefit of that is, with our internal systems, which we have 2 or 3, we feed it straight into those particular systems. Now the latest round comes along, we have this body of knowledge from the first round, and they have this draw to concept where previous SBA loan recipient can request a second draw. We have all their information. It's honestly incredible. Working with Anvil, we created, I wouldn't call it a pre-qualification because we didn't qualify them, but it's like a lead qualification workflow, identified that particular borrower, picked up all their information, encrypted it, send it back to them with a link that when they clicked, they filled out the round 2 application with all their pre-filled information. They don't have to worry about what's my SBA number, what's my loan number, is it the authorization number, or is that the acknowledgement number, what's the loan amount? All of those things were prepackaged and really caused that flywheel to spin. And I'm actually looking at numbers live right now, and we have about 2,782 apps in the hopper. I don't know, let's see, from a draw 1, draw 2 perspective, my data will come through. It's taking a bit of time to refresh, but that's no reflection. But honestly,
I was gonna say, Brett, I definitely want to make sure that we give credit where it's due, because your team, you have a technical team on your side, and the one thing that was really nice is the API integrations that we could work together on and really make this process end to end, right? Like Anvil is really about gathering data and packaging that data in a way that is presentable to you, to your team, where they don't have to do a lot of data cleaning. But your team really did put a lot of effort into, registering for our webhook notifications, so that they automatically know when something's done, and then automatically downloading all the information that is necessary. So really, I feel like that probably was maybe one of the biggest wins, which is like not having a person manually do this type of work.
Absolutely, right. And like I said, the requirements are evolving real time, and we can quickly make a change and add that data field or manipulate it or make it clear, because now we've got the information in-house, and every morning, Margaret, we are reporting. Brian Toft, our Chief Sales Officer, reports, here's how many applications are sitting in Anvil, here's how many are in our hopper internal, and here's the data quality index. And by that data quality index, we look at where are we getting in our exceptions flow, where are we seeing commonalities, and invariably it's some language that we can adjust inside of Anvil, and we see that tick up. So it's taking us from a kind of a radar, flyby sound, into really getting data-driven. This is where you can make a tweak to the machine, and my business loves it. It's incredible.
I have to say, one thing that's come out of the PPP is that I think the SBA is really just messing with all the banks. Like, oh, you thought you had your system ready. Let's tweak it now and make it difficult for you again. That's been a lot of fun. Cool. Well, I think we are coming a little bit close to time, so I'm going to move this along a little bit. So I'm going to actually go ahead and give everybody a quick demonstration of what an example Anvil workflow can look and feel like. So if we could switch over to the presentation mode, great. I want to do a quick screen share here. Bear with me for 1 second.
There we go. That's it.
There we go. Awesome. Cool. So this here is the Anvil dashboard. This is where a lot of the Sunrise team is working in to kind of see the status of workflows. And I believe you also have a dashboard internally that pulls this information and displays it in different formats. But this is the out-of-the-box Anvil dashboard. You'll notice here that we're on an example workflow called the switch kit. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with it. It's when somebody opens a new bank account and you want them to move their direct deposit and payments and all that over to the new bank account. That we built a switch kit workflow based on existing switch kit paperwork. Down here, you'll see there's a couple of sections. There's an in progress section, there's a completed section. There's also a awaiting signature section that shows up when there are workflows that are waiting for signature. Another nice thing is you can click into any of these workflows at any given point in time, and you have a nice audit trail, which is very useful for figuring out what's happening. You have some controls over the workflow down here. You can see if the data that was provided. You can also switch over the file output view and download the completed document. And so going back over to the Spank SwitchKit view, we're going to go ahead and just run through this workflow as if you were a client of the bank, and you can kind of see what the resulting output is. Oops. Copy. Open a new tab. So now I'm a client of the bank, and I visit this link. This link can be, I could have received it over email. It can be embedded on the bank's website. But it's a unique link for this workflow. And then when a client visits this link, we actually generate a unique link for that client. So it is always tied to a specific person. You'll notice there's some information up front here with a logo. All of this can be customized to match your needs. And then you can just kind of go next. So here, I'm going to go ahead and enter my own name. But one thing you'll notice is as I go through this workflow, if I misenter my phone number, for example, it automatically notifies me, and I can't actually progress until I enter my full phone number. Where do you live? This is an address field that uses Google to find your location. And then another thing to notice is this view here is actually centered like this because when you load this page on a mobile device like your iPhone, it actually works out of the box. So you never have to worry about having a mobile-friendly website and then another desktop website. And I don't know if actually, Brad, do we have statistics on this? Like how many people actually filled out the PPP on a mobile device versus the desktop?
We do. I don't have it at my fingertips, but yeah, it's only a fair amount.
Yeah, so you know, it's I think that's nice. Where in the sense that a lot of people are relying on their mobile devices these days, and you know, don't really use their desktop as much. So this helps you reach those customers. Here's an example of dynamic fields. So if I say Acme Bank checking, you'll notice it asks for the checking account number. But if I say Acme Bank savings, it asks for the savings account number. So I'm going to enter a number. You can add custom validation to these fields so that it matches the format of your account numbers. Again, direct deposit, employer name. So Inc. I'm going to do an address field, phone number. And another thing that I want to point out here is that this workflow actually saves information as you go. So let's say I am in the middle of a really long application. I think mortgage applications is an example of where there's always a lot of information that needs to be gathered, or even the PPP. It takes people a while to get the information and fill in the pieces that they need to fill in. Anvil actually saves automatically. So when you refresh the page or come back to it later, all of your information is in there that you've already entered, and you can see here that you don't actually lose your place. And that's, again, kind of like highlighting the elevated user experience that we're trying to strive for.
Yeah, and Margaret, I also just butt in here because, I mean, all of this information, if this is a repeat applicant where you have any of this information and can identify it with secrets, with a secure combination of secrets, you could seed this information that they wouldn't have to type it in. And that's exactly what we did with PPP, and that was a game changer for us.
Yeah, I think that was, I was really excited when we kind of came up with that workflow, because not only were we able to pre-identify customers or borrowers, it was also acted as somewhat of a KYC, right? You could use their information that they entered in the lead form to then verify them, look them up in your database, also see if the information they provided matched before sending out that draw to PPP loan application.
Absolutely.
That was a pretty exciting time when we came up with that. I feel like. I'm going to auto pay my corporate card, some information, an account number. Finally, the client gets a nice little review of their information. They can edit the information if something was mistyped, and they can review and sign the document. So this document here is what the switch kit used to look like. You know, when somebody opened a new account, they would get a stack of paper, or they'd be asked to download a form, and they would have to fill this out by hand. Now, with the Anvil experience, they filled out the online web form. This form gets generated with the information in all the right places. So you don't have to worry about somebody being confused or putting the information. I think one thing that I always do on accident is put my name above the line instead of below the line. So this kind of eliminates all of those issues. And all you have to do is click sign. And now I get the opportunity to download the PDF document. If I switch back to the dashboard, I'm going to refresh this real quick. You'll notice at the bottom here, Manget finished this a minute ago. And also, to Brett's point with the messaging infrastructure, their servers would have received a notification that said, somebody completed this, here's all the information, go download the documents from the Anvil system. And that would have happened all automatically in the background. And just like that, that's the Anvil experience. Go ahead and stop my screen share. Hey, is everybody still there? I seem to have lost control of the webinar, so.
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, there we go.
You back?
Perfect. Great. And so with that, I am going to open it up to questions. If anybody has questions, please let us know, and we're happy to answer them.
All right, Manget, Brett, thank you for the presentation. We are at the outer bounds of our time limit today with the presentation there. So anybody who submitted a question, we will pass those questions along to Anvil and to Sunrise, and they'll be able to answer them for you offline. We're also going to have a survey pop up on your screen. Those of you who are still with us, we encourage you to fill out that survey for BAI. And let me wrap it up by thanking Manget and Brett for sharing their insights with us today. For the attendees, as a follow-up to today's session, you'll receive an email from BAI within 24 hours. That will include a link to today's webinar recording. We encourage you to share the link with your team and with other peers who might benefit from the insights shared today. You can learn more about BAI and find other relevant content and actionable insights, such as the BAI Banking Strategies podcast on our website, bai.org. This wraps up the session. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, and enjoy the rest of your day.